Hey, I never thought I'd be one to share my life's mess on the internet. But here I am. I need advice, perspective, or maybe just a place to vent. Here's my story. My name is Dave, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. We met in college, fell head over heels, and tied the knot just a couple of years after graduation. Our relationship felt like something out of a rom-com. We had our inside jokes, our lazy Sundays, and even those ridiculous pet names that make you cringe when other people use them. Sarah had this vibrant personality that drew people in, including her best friend Emily. Emily and Sarah had been inseparable since high school, way before I entered the picture. I didn't mind. I actually liked Emily a lot. She was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely supportive of our relationship. The three of us often hung out together, and I never once felt like a third wheel. The first sign of trouble came about 6 months ago. Sarah started to withdraw, become more secretive. She'd spend more nights out with Emily, which wasn't unusual, but now there was this weird tension. She'd come home late, sometimes not at all, and when I asked her about it, she'd snap or brush me off with some vague excuse about girl stuff or needing space. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but something felt off. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the way she started acting around me. Cold, distant, almost like I was a stranger in my own home. Our once active sex life dwindled to almost nothing, and when we did have sex, it felt like she was somewhere else entirely. One night, Sarah came home particularly late. She reeked of alcohol and had this look in her eyes that I couldn't place. When I tried to talk to her, she snapped at me, yelling that she was tired of my constant questioning and that I needed to trust her. I was stunned. This was not the woman I married. The next morning, I decided to look through her phone. I know, it's a huge invasion of privacy, but I was desperate for answers. What I found shattered me. There were hundreds of texts between Sarah and Emily, messages that were far from innocent. They talked about their feelings, their doubts, and how they wished things were different. There were even explicit messages and pictures that left no room for misinterpretation. I felt sick. My heart pounded in my chest, and my hands shook as I scrolled through the messages. I couldn't believe it. My wife was cheating on me with her best friend. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was our entire marriage a lie? What did I do wrong? I confronted Sarah that evening. I showed her the texts and demanded an explanation. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock, then narrowed with anger. "You went through my phone?" she yelled. "How could you invade my privacy like that?" I could barely contain my rage. "How could you cheat on me with Emily?" I shot back. "How long has this been going on, Sarah? I deserve to know the truth." She deflated then, her anger dissolving into something that looked like guilt. She took a deep breath and sat down on the couch, burying her face in her hands. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "Dave, I didn't mean for this to happen. Emily and we've always been close, but recently things just changed. I didn't know how to tell you. I'm so sorry." My world came crashing down around me. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, had been having an affair with her best friend. And now she was saying she didn't know how to tell me? I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly lost. That night I left the house. I needed space, time to think, and most importantly, I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. After leaving the house that night, I drove around aimlessly for hours. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and confusion. I couldn't comprehend how my wife, the person I trusted most in the world, could betray me like this, and with Emily of all people. It felt like a double betrayal. I eventually ended up at my brother Mike's place. He's always been my rock, the one person I can turn to when everything goes to shit. When he opened the door and saw the look on my face, he didn't ask any questions. He just handed me a beer and we sat in silence for a while before I finally told him everything. Mike was as shocked as I was. "Dude, that's messed up," he said, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel like my whole life is a lie. How could she do this to me?" "You need to confront her, get the whole story," Mike advised. You deserve to know the truth, and then you can figure out your next steps. I stayed at Mike's that night, tossing and turning, unable to shut off my racing thoughts. By morning, I had decided that I needed to talk to Sarah again, to get the full truth. I couldn't just walk away without understanding what had happened. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me in the living room. She looked like she hadn't slept either, her eyes red and puffy. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded and we sat down. "I'm so sorry, Dave," she began. "I never wanted to hurt you. This thing with Emily, it just happened. We didn't plan it." "Didn't plan it?" I echoed, my anger rising again. "How long has this been going on, Sarah? And don't lie to me." She took a deep breath and started to explain. "It had begun about a year ago," she said. "They'd been out for drinks one night and things had gotten out of hand. One kiss led to another, and before they knew it, they were involved in an affair. She swore it was only physical at first, but over time emotions got tangled up, and she started to have feelings for Emily. I didn't know how to tell you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was scared of losing you. But I couldn't stop what was happening with Emily either. I've been so confused." "Confused?" I snapped. "You cheated on me for a year, Sarah, a whole year. How could you do this to us? To me?" She broke down completely then, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, Dave. I don't have any excuses. I messed up. I betrayed you and I hate myself for it." As much as I wanted to hate her, seeing her like that made my anger waver. This was the woman I loved, the woman I had planned a future with. But now that future was crumbling before my eyes. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice shaking. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes filled with guilt and sorrow. "I don't know," she admitted. "I care about her, but I'm so confused about everything right now." That was the breaking point for me. I couldn't stay in a marriage where my wife didn't even know if she loved me or someone else. "I need some time," I said, standing up. "I need to think about what I want, what we're going to do." Sarah nodded, still crying. "Take all the time you need, Dave. I'll respect whatever decision you make." I grabbed some clothes and essentials, then left the house again, this time with a heavier heart. I couldn't go back to Mike's. I needed space to think, to process everything. So I checked into a hotel and spent the next few days in a fog, replaying our conversation over and over in my mind. Eventually, I decided to meet up with Emily. I needed to hear her side of the story. Maybe it was a mistake, but I needed answers. I called her and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop we all used to frequent. When she arrived, she looked just as wrecked as Sarah had. "Dave, I'm so sorry," she began as soon as she sat down. "I never wanted to come between you two." "Then why did you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why didn't you stop it before it got this far?" Emily sighed, looking down at her coffee. "It's complicated. Sarah and we have a lot of history. When things started happening, I thought it was just a phase, something she'd get over. But then feelings got involved and... I don't know, I'm sorry, Dave, I really am." Her apology felt hollow, but I could see she was struggling too. "Do you love her?" I asked bluntly. Emily hesitated before nodding slowly. "I think I do, but I never meant to hurt you. I never meant for any of this to happen." Hearing her say that hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just some fling. Emily had real feelings for Sarah, and Sarah, well, I still wasn't sure what Sarah felt. I left the coffee shop more confused than ever. The two people I trusted most had betrayed me, and now I had to figure out what to do with my life. I felt lost, but I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever. I had to make a decision, for my own sanity. After meeting Emily, I felt more lost than ever. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that my wife was in love with her best friend. It felt like a betrayal on so many levels. I took a few more days in the hotel, trying to sort out my thoughts and figure out my next steps. I decided to go back home and have another talk with Sarah. I needed to know where we stood and what she wanted. When I got back, the house felt eerily quiet. Sarah was sitting on the couch, staring at a picture of us from our wedding day. When she saw me, she stood up, looking nervous. "Dave, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. "I agree," I replied, sitting down across from her. I need to know what you want, Sarah. Do you want to be with me or with Emily? She looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know, she whispered. I care about you both. I love you, Dave. But I also have feelings for Emily. I'm so confused. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. So what does that mean for us? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I think we need some time apart, she said, her voice breaking. I need to figure out my feelings. And you need to figure out what you want too. Maybe some space will help us both. The idea of separating tore me apart, but I knew she was right. We couldn't keep going like this, pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Okay, I agreed reluctantly. We'll take some time apart, but we need to set some boundaries. No contact with Emily while we figure this out. She nodded, looking miserable. I understand, I promise, no contact with Emily. With that, we decided to separate. Sarah stayed in the house and I went to stay with Mike again. It was awkward and painful, but it felt like the only option at that point. I needed time to heal, to process everything that had happened. The first few days apart were brutal. I missed Sarah terribly, and every little thing reminded me of her. Our inside jokes, her smile, the way she'd curl up next to me on the couch. But I also knew that things couldn't go back to the way they were, not without some serious changes. I decided to see a therapist to help me work through my feelings. It was something I'd never done before, but I needed to talk to someone who could give me an unbiased perspective. My therapist, Dr. Lawson, was great. She listened to my story, validated my feelings, and helped me start to untangle the mess of emotions I was dealing with. During one of our sessions, Dr. Lawson asked me a question that hit me hard. Dave, what do you want? Not what Sarah wants or what Emily wants. What do you want for yourself? I sat there, stunned. I realized I hadn't really thought about what I wanted. I'd been so focused on Sarah and her feelings that I'd forgotten about my own needs. I want to be happy, I said finally. I want to be with someone who loves me, who's committed to me. I want a real partnership. Then you need to focus on that, Dr. Lawson said gently. You deserve to be happy, Dave. Don't lose sight of that. Her words stuck with me. I started to think more about my own happiness and what I needed from a relationship. I realized that even if Sarah decided she wanted to stay with me, things would never be the same. The trust was broken, and I wasn't sure if we could ever truly repair it. A few weeks into our separation, I got a call from Sarah. Can we meet? She asked. I think we need to talk. I agreed, and we met at a park near our house. Sarah looked nervous, and I could tell she'd been crying. Dave, I've done a lot of thinking, she began, and I need to be honest with you. I've realized that my feelings for Emily aren't just a phase. I think I'm a lesbian. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. What? I asked, barely able to process what she was saying. I've been so confused for so long, she continued. But I think I've always known deep down. I love you, Dave, and I always will. But I'm not being true to myself or to you. I need to explore this part of me. I sat there stunned. This was the last thing I expected. So what does this mean for us? I asked, my voice shaking. It means we need to end our marriage, she said softly. It's not fair to either of us to stay in a relationship where I can't fully be myself. I'm so sorry, Dave. Her words felt like a death sentence to our marriage. I was devastated, but I also knew she was right. We couldn't continue like this. I understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just wish things were different. Me too, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you. We sat there in silence for a while, both of us crying. It was the end of an era, the end of our marriage. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and, strangely, relief. At least now there was some clarity. We agreed to file for divorce and start the process of separating our lives. It was painful and messy, but it felt like the right thing to do. Sarah moved out and started living with Emily, and I stayed with Mike while I looked for a new place. This whole experience has been a roller coaster of emotions, but I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm focusing on my own happiness and figuring out what I want for my future. It's not easy, but I'm getting there, one day at a time. After deciding to end our marriage, Sarah and I began the painful process of untangling our lives. We contacted a lawyer to handle the divorce proceedings, and although it was amicable, it was still heart-wrenching. We divided our assets, sold our home, and went our separate ways. Each step felt like a dagger in the heart, but it was necessary to move forward. During this time, I stayed with Mike, who was a godsend. He kept me grounded, reminding me to eat, sleep, and take care of myself. I also continued my therapy sessions with Dr. Lawson, which helped immensely. She guided me through the grieving process, encouraging me to confront my emotions rather than suppress them. One of the hardest parts was facing our mutual friends. Most of them had no idea what had happened, and explaining the situation was awkward and painful. Some friends were supportive while others distanced themselves, not knowing how to handle the complexity of our breakup. It was a stark reminder of how intertwined our lives had become and how much was now changing. I eventually found a small apartment not too far from Mike's place. Moving in felt both liberating and lonely. For the first time in years, I was truly on my own. It was a chance to rediscover myself, but also a stark reminder of everything I had lost. I focused on making the space my own, decorating it in a way that felt comforting and personal. As for Sarah and Emily, they moved in together almost immediately. It hurt to know they were starting a new chapter while I was still picking up the pieces of my old one. But I tried not to dwell on it. I reminded myself that their relationship was their journey, and I needed to focus on mine. In the months that followed, I started to rebuild my life. I threw myself into work, took up new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. I joined a gym, started hiking, and even took a cooking class. It was my way of reclaiming my independence and finding joy in things that had nothing to do with my past. One day, while hiking, I ran into an old friend from college, Lisa. We hadn't seen each other in years, but we quickly fell back into our old rhythm, chatting and laughing as we caught up. Lisa had always been a good friend, and reconnecting with her was a breath of fresh air. We started hanging out regularly, going for hikes, grabbing coffee, and even hitting the gym together. It felt good to have someone in my life who wasn't connected to the mess of my divorce. Lisa knew about my situation but never pried, allowing me to share at my own pace. Her presence was a comforting reminder that life goes on, and new connections can bring unexpected joy. One evening, over dinner, Lisa asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Dave, have you thought about dating again?" I stared at her, unsure how to respond. The idea of dating felt foreign and daunting. "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted. "I'm still trying to figure out who I am outside of my marriage." She nodded, understanding. "That makes sense. But when you're ready, just know that there are people out there who'd be lucky to have you in their life." Her words stuck with me. I wasn't sure when I'd be ready to date again, but it was nice to know that it was a possibility. For now, I was content to focus on myself and my healing journey. Months passed, and I started to feel more like myself again. I continued therapy, maintained my new routines, and enjoyed my time with Lisa and other friends. I even started volunteering at a local animal shelter, which brought a new sense of purpose and fulfillment to my life. One day, out of the blue, I got a call from Sarah. My heart raced as I saw her name on my phone, but I took a deep breath and answered. "Hey, Sarah, what's up?" "Hi, Dave," she said, her voice sounding tentative. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." "I'm doing okay," I replied. "Trying to move forward, you know." "I'm glad to hear that," she said softly. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I just wanted to say how sorry I am for the way things ended. I know I hurt you deeply, and I regret how I handled everything." Her apology felt sincere, and for the first time I felt a sense of closure. "Thank you, Sarah, I appreciate that. I hope you're doing well too." We chatted for a few more minutes, exchanging pleasantries and catching up. It was a civil conversation, and when I hung up I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was a reminder that healing is possible, and that sometimes closure comes from the most unexpected places. As the weeks went by, I started to feel more at peace with my new life. I wasn't completely over the pain of the betrayal, but I was learning to live with it, I focused on the positives, like my growing friendship with Lisa, my newfound hobbies, and the sense of independence I was cultivating. Life was starting to feel normal again, and for that, I was grateful. I knew I still had a long way to go, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. After my conversation with Sarah, I felt a new sense of clarity. I had forgiven her in my own way and was ready to move forward without the weight of anger and resentment. I decided it was time to embrace the future and let go of the past. Lisa and I continued to grow closer. We spent more time together and our friendship deepened into something more. It was gradual and natural, and I realized how much I enjoyed her company. She was kind, supportive, and always made me laugh. For the first time since my marriage ended, I felt genuinely happy. One evening, after a particularly fun day hiking, we sat down to a quiet dinner at my apartment. The conversation flowed easily, and I felt a strong connection with her. As we were finishing up, Lisa looked at me with a mix of curiosity and affection. "Dave, I've really enjoyed spending time with you these past few months," she said, her voice soft. "I think we have something special here. What do you think?" Her words mirrored my own feelings. "I feel the same way, Lisa," I replied. "I've been hesitant to start something new, but you've shown me that there's life after heartbreak. I'd like to see where this goes." We decided to take things slow, enjoying our time together and letting our relationship develop naturally. It was refreshing to be with someone who understood me and accepted me for who I was. Our connection felt genuine and effortless. As Lisa and I continued to build our relationship, I felt a growing sense of optimism. We started going on more adventures together, exploring new places, and making memories. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past year, and I felt like I was finally living again. My relationship with Sarah also evolved. We maintained a cordial distance, occasionally catching up over the phone. She seemed happier with Emily, and while it still stung to think about, I was glad she had found her path. We both deserved happiness, even if it wasn't with each other. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I continued my therapy sessions, which helped me maintain a healthy perspective on my experiences. I also stayed active with my hobbies and volunteering, finding fulfillment in helping others. Lisa and I grew even closer, and our relationship became a source of joy and stability. We celebrated milestones together, supported each other through challenges, and built a foundation based on trust and mutual respect. One sunny afternoon, while Lisa and I were picnicking in the park, she turned to me with a serious expression. "Dave, I've been thinking a lot about us," she said. "I want you to know that I see a future with you. I love you." Her words filled me with warmth. "I love you too, Lisa," I replied. "You've brought so much happiness into my life. I can't imagine my future without you." From that moment on, we committed to building a life together. We talked about our dreams, our goals, and how we could support each other. It felt right, and I was excited about what the future held. As time passed, Lisa and I continued to grow our relationship. We moved in together, blending our lives and creating a home filled with love and laughter. It wasn't always easy, but we faced challenges together, knowing that our bond was strong. I also maintained my friendship with Mike, who had been my rock through the toughest times. We often reminisced about how far I had come, and I was grateful for his unwavering support. Looking back, I realized that the experience of discovering Sarah's affair and our subsequent divorce had fundamentally changed me. It was a painful journey, but it led me to a place of self-discovery and personal growth. I learned the importance of prioritizing my own happiness and being true to myself. To anyone going through a similar experience, my advice is this: allow yourself to grieve, but don't let it define you. Seek support from friends, family, or a therapist. Focus on your own healing and happiness, and know that it's possible to find love and joy again. Thank you for being a part of my journey. Your support has meant the world to me. Here's to new beginnings and the promise of a brighter future. The end.
Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments.